Julia's worries started with a simple question. Why is my child so tired? Julia was a mom just like many others, loving, attentive, and always watching her daughter smile. But over time, that smile started to fade. Her 13-year-old daughter, who once ran around with friends, began to complain about something that didn't make sense. My legs feel heavy. I'm always tired, even after I sleep. If you've ever heard words like these from your child or even from yourself, stay with me. At first, Julia thought it was normal. Teenage stress, too much screen time, maybe growing pains, but the tiredness didn't go away. It got worse. So Julia did what any caring parent would do. She took her daughter to the doctor. Routine blood tests were done. Iron levels, normal. Hemoglobin, normal. Basic labs, normal. Her energy, on paper, should have been normal. But real life told a very different story. The exhaustion stayed. The muscle weakness stayed. And that's when fear quietly enters. Not loudly, but slowly. Because when tests say normal, but your child isn't okay, you feel stuck. No clear answer. Doctors checked for anemia. They checked thyroid levels. They checked infections. Everything seemed fine. Still, something was very wrong. Have you ever been told everything looks okay when you knew something wasn't? Finally, a pediatric specialist suggested one more test, a test that often gets missed. A vitamin D level. The results shocked Julia and the medical team. Her daughter's vitamin D level was under 5 ng/ml. That number matters, because this wasn't a little low. This was severe deficiency. This means virtually no usable vitamin D was circulating in her body. Vitamin D at this level can weaken muscles, slow recovery, drain energy, affect mood, interfere with normal movement. This wasn't stress. This wasn't laziness. This wasn't imagination. This was biology. Once doctors started proper, medically guided vitamin D treatment, things began to change. Not overnight, but steadily, over weeks. Her strength improved, her energy returned her. Mood lifted, she felt like herself again, and for Julia, the fear finally loosened its grip. Now listen carefully. This case is not fiction. It is based on a real, published medical report of a 13-year-old child with severe vitamin D deficiency. Muscle weakness, difficulty walking, extreme fatigue after treatment. Muscle strength and energy returned. This shows how deeply vitamin D deficiency can affect the body, even in young people. And here's the part that matters to you. This story isn't just about a teenager. It matters to you. If you feel tired even after tests come back normal, you've been told it's just stress. You fixed your hemoglobin but still feel weak. Your body feels heavy for no clear reason. Because there's a pattern here that often gets missed. You can have enough hemoglobin and still feel weak and exhausted because your vitamin D is too low. And this is exactly why millions of adults in the US struggle with ongoing fatigue. They have a deficiency that isn't obvious at first glance. It hides behind normal reports. So what exactly happened in Julia's daughter's body? Let's break this down simply. Vitamin D is not just about bones. For years, people believed vitamin D only mattered for calcium. But that's only part of the story. Vitamin D works more like a messenger. It helps muscles move, nerves communicate, energy get used properly. When vitamin D is very low, the body struggles to function, even when other lab tests look fine. That's exactly what happened here. Let's summarize what made this so confusing. Routine labs looked normal. The child felt exhausted, weakness kept getting worse, only vitamin D. Testing revealed the real issue, treatment led to real improvement. This pattern repeats again and again in children and adults. If you've been following this channel, this should sound familiar. You already learned that hemoglobin carries oxygen, iron, B12, folate, and B6 build healthy red blood cells. Fatigue can exist even with acceptable HB levels, and that lifestyle, absorption, and age affect recovery. Now comes the next layer. Think of hemoglobin as a delivery truck for oxygen. But vitamin D is not a passenger. It is not fuel. It is the control system. It tells your muscles, bones, immune cells, and brain how to use that oxygen. Without enough vitamin D, oxygen arrives, but energy does not fully form. Does this sound familiar? Have you ever thought, I fixed everything, so why do I still feel weak? You're not alone. You might be thinking, but we get sun. But we eat healthy, so how does this happen? Here's the truth. Even in sunny regions, vitamin D deficiency is common because most people stay indoors. Sunscreen blocks vitamin D production. Modern life limits sunlight. Darker skin produces less vitamin D. Older skin makes less vitamin. Energy, muscle strength, full body function. This is why many people feel tired and weak, even when doctors say, your tests are normal. Tired, achy, foggy, weak long before that stage, especially if hemoglobin is already corrected. The person is over 30, they work indoors, so deficiency quietly drains energy, day after day. This video series is built like our hemoglobin series. No repetition, no filler. Every minute adds value. We're going to understand why vitamin D is vital for energy, why deficiency is so common, why fixing HB is often not enough, the early warning signs people ignore, and what to do clearly and safely. This is not fear-based content. It's real. It's science-based. And it's grounded in real cases, like the one we started with. Now that you've heard this story, and maybe seen yourself or someone you love in it, we'll move on to understand what vitamin D actually does inside your body, beyond bones. Because once you understand that, you'll finally understand why everyday life can feel so heavy, even when everything else looks fine. For decades, vitamin D was introduced to the public with a very simple message. Vitamin D is for bones. And while that statement is not wrong, it is incomplete. Because if vitamin D were only about bones, it wouldn't explain why so many people feel tired, weak, foggy, or emotionally low. Vitamin D is not just a vitamin. It behaves more like a master signal, a coordinator that helps different systems in your body work together smoothly. And to understand why low vitamin D can affect energy, muscles, mood, immunity, and even skin, we need to look at what it actually does inside the body. Once you see this clearly, many confusing symptoms suddenly make sense. Let's start by correcting one common misunderstanding. Here's something many people don't realize. Vitamin D is technically classified as a prohormone. That means your body makes it, your organs respond to it, it binds to specific receptors, it influences how genes behave. This is very different from a simple vitamin you just consume. Scientists have identified vitamin D receptors in more than 30 different tissues, including muscles, brain, immune cells, heart, skin, bone marrow. So when vitamin D levels fall, the effect is body-wide, not limited to one organ. This explains something important. Vitamin D deficiency doesn't usually cause one loud symptom. It creates a pattern, and patterns are often missed. Let's start with muscles, because this is where many people first notice something is wrong. Muscle cells depend on vitamin D to contract properly, maintain strength, recover after use, prevent early fatigue. When vitamin D is low, muscle fibers weaken, coordination declines, recovery slows, pain sensitivity increases. This is why people often say, my legs feel heavy, my arms get tired easily, I feel weak, not sleepy. That distinction matters. Clinical studies consistently show that low vitamin D is linked to reduced muscle strength and endurance, especially in adults over 40. And this connects directly back to your hemoglobin series. Hemoglobin may deliver oxygen, but without vitamin D, muscles struggle to use that oxygen efficiently. Oxygen arrives, but energy doesn't fully form, and this brings us to something many people don't expect. Fatigue isn't only physical. Many people with low vitamin D describe brain fog, poor focus, low motivation, irritability, low mood, and often they blame themselves. But this isn't imagined. Vitamin D receptors exist in areas of the brain involved in mood, balance, thinking, and focus, neurotransmitter function. When vitamin D is low, studies show links to higher perceived fatigue, reduced mental clarity, increased inflammatory signals in the brain. This is why people often say, my body is tired, but my mind feels tired too. And now you know why. But muscles and the brain are only part of the picture. There's another system, quietly draining energy when vitamin D is low. Your immune system is one of the biggest energy users in your body. Vitamin D doesn't make immunity stronger or weaker. It helps keep it balanced. When vitamin D is adequate, immune responses are efficient, inflammation resolves, recovery is smooth. When vitamin D is low, inflammation lingers, the immune system stays mildly active, energy is constantly pulled into defense mode. This can create ongoing tiredness, body aches, slow recovery from minor illnesses. And it often happens without fever or obvious infection. That's why people feel run down without knowing why. Now let's talk about bones, but in a deeper way. D helps the body Absorb calcium, maintain bone density, prevent fractures. But bones are not just support beams. Bone is living tissue. It stores minerals, supports muscle attachment, houses bone marrow, where blood cells are made. Low vitamin D affects this entire system, which is why long-term deficiency is linked to chronic pain, poor posture, reduced mobility, higher fracture risk. All of these feed back into fatigue and weakness over time. Now here, as a connection many people don't expect. Your skin is not just where vitamin D is made. It's also where vitamin D acts. Skin cells use vitamin D to regulate cell turnover, maintain barrier strength, control inflammation, support healing. Low vitamin D has been linked to dry or irritated skin, poor wound healing, inflammatory skin conditions. This is important for what's coming next on this channel. Skin often shows imbalance before deeper problems appear. We'll return to this connection later. Carefully and clearly, let's bring this back to where your audience started with you. Hemoglobin delivers oxygen. Vitamin D helps tissues use oxygen, reduces inflammatory energy loss, supports muscle and nerve function. This is why fixing HB improves reports. Fixing vitamin D improves how you feel. Both matter. Neither works fully alone. Now that you understand what vitamin D actually does across the body, one question becomes unavoidable. Why is deficiency so common, even in people who eat well? Why does living in a sunny place not protect everyone? And why does age make this problem worse? That's exactly where we go next. Most people believe vitamin D deficiency happens for one simple reason: not enough sunlight. And at first, that sounds logical, but here's the problem. If sunlight were the only reason, this deficiency would be rare, not widespread, especially not in a country like the United States. Yet national data tells a very different story. According to the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, NHANES, more than 40% of U.S. adults have insufficient or deficient vitamin D levels. And after age 40, that number rises sharply. This is not a rare issue. It is not limited to poor diets. It is not confined to cold or cloudy places. So the real question becomes unavoidable. Why does vitamin D deficiency happen so often, even in people who believe they're doing everything right? To answer that, we need to look at how modern life quietly interferes with the body's ability to make and use vitamin D. Let's make this real with an actual case. In 2012, a case report published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism described a 45-year-old man who came to his doctor with persistent fatigue, diffuse muscle pain, difficulty climbing stairs, reduced exercise tolerance. His routine blood tests were normal. Hemoglobin was normal, thyroid function was normal, kidney and liver tests were normal. He was active, employed full-time, and had no major chronic illness. For months, his symptoms were explained as stress, aging, deconditioning. Many viewers will recognize this story already. Eventually, a clinician checked vitamin D. His level was 8 ng/ml, classified as severe deficiency. After medically supervised vitamin D replacement, he experienced improved muscle strength, reduced pain, marked improvement in fatigue within weeks. This case became widely cited because it exposed a critical blind spot. Vitamin D deficiency can exist quietly, even when standard labs look normal. And symptoms are often dismissed as just aging. Now let's talk about age, because this is where things start slipping silently. One of the strongest predictors of vitamin D deficiency is age. As we move into our 30s and 40s, the skin becomes less efficient at producing vitamin D, even with the same sunlight exposure. Research by McLaughlin and Hollick showed that a 70-year-old produces about 75% less vitamin D in the skin than a 20-year-old exposed to the same sunlight. This means going outside doesn't guarantee adequate production. I get sun doesn't equal I make enough vitamin D. The decline happens slowly, so people don't notice it. This explains why deficiency often appears suddenly, even though it's been developing for years, and aging isn't acting alone. Most adults today work indoors, commute in covered vehicles, exercise indoors, relax in front of screens. Even in sunny states, actual UVB exposure to skin is minimal. Public health studies show the average American spends over 90% of their time indoors. And here's an important detail many people miss. Sunlight through windows does not help. Glass blocks the UVB rays required for vitamin D synthesis. So even people living in bright, warm climates may be producing very little vitamin D. Now, we enter a sensitive but important area. Let's be clear. Sunscreen saves lives. It prevents skin cancer. No responsible health professional argues against it. However, studies show that SPF 30 sunscreen can reduce vitamin D production by over 95%. This doesn't mean sunscreen is bad. It means vitamin D deficiency risk increases. In people who practice excellent sun protection, especially among fair-skinned individuals, people with a family history of skin cancer, highly health-conscious adults, ironically, those trying hardest to protect their health may increase deficiency risk. Lifestyle isn't the whole story. Skin pigmentation plays a real role in vitamin D synthesis. Melanin acts as a natural UV filter. Darker skin requires longer sun exposure to produce the same amount of vitamin D as lighter skin. Large population studies published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition show that vitamin D deficiency rates are significantly higher in individuals with darker skin tones, even after adjusting for diet and sun exposure habits. This is not a flaw. It's a biological adaptation that worked well historically, but clashes with modern indoor living. Now let's look at how this appears at the population level. The CDC has linked low vitamin D levels to increased fall risk, muscle weakness, balance problems in older adults in multiple randomized trials. Vitamin D supplementation reduced fall risk, not by boosting energy, but by improving neuromuscular coordination. This reinforces a critical idea. Vitamin D deficiency shows up as weakness and instability long before bones break. So why isn't this caught earlier? Most routine checkups test hemoglobin, thyroid, blood sugar, cholesterol. Vitamin D is usually tested only when bone disease is suspected, fractures occur, severe muscle symptoms appear. This creates a diagnostic gap. People live for years with low-grade fatigue, muscle aches, poor stamina, slow recovery, while being told, this is where your viewer's experience finally makes sense. Asterisk iron was corrected. Hemoglobin improved. Diet was optimized. But vitamin D deficiency limits muscle efficiency, maintains inflammation, reduces cellular energy use. So energy improves, but never fully returns. The system remains incomplete. Everything looks normal. Vitamin D deficiency is common not because people are careless, but because aging reduces skin production, modern life limits, sun exposure, protective behaviors, reduce synthesis, routine labs miss the issue. This makes deficiency silent, progressive, and widespread. Now the question becomes personal. Do you recognize these patterns in yourself? Have you felt weaker, slower, or more tired without a clear reason? In thickening discussions, we'll explore what signs the body gives before deficiency becomes severe, and which symptoms people ignore for years. Long before vitamin D deficiency ever shows up on a lab report, the body begins sending quiet signals. Not traumatic symptoms, not medical emergencies, just subtle changes that slowly become part of daily life. Most people don't wake up one morning thinking something is deficient in my body. They adapt. They push through. They explain it away. And that is exactly why this condition often goes undetected for years. Let's walk through the earliest signs, the ones people live with quietly, and understand why they happen. Let's begin with the most common complaint people normalize. I'm just not as strong as I used to be. Not pain, not injury. Just a quiet loss of strength. Clinical studies published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism show that vitamin D receptors are present directly inside muscle cells. This means vitamin D isn't optional support. It's required for muscle contraction, coordination, endurance. When levels fall, muscles fatigue, faster recovery, slows movements, feel heavier. People notice it as difficulty getting up from a chair, needing the railing on stairs, avoiding activities they once enjoyed, and almost always they tell themselves, I'm just getting older. But research shows this weakness is not inevitable. It's often biochemical. This pattern didn't go unnoticed in clinical practice. In geriatric medicine, doctors noticed a consistent trend. Older adults presenting with frequent falls, slower walking speed, poor balance, often had low vitamin D levels, even when calcium levels and bone scans looked normal. Large-scale trials cited by the NIH showed that correcting vitamin D deficiency improved muscle performance, improved balance, significantly reduced fall risk. This confirmed a key point. Muscle weakness often appears long before bone problems. But weakness isn't the only early sign. Another early signal is cognitive dullness, often described as brain fog, difficulty concentrating, reduced mental stamina, lack of motivation. Vitamin D receptors are widely distributed throughout the brain, especially in areas involved in mood regulation, attention, cognitive processing. Studies published in Neurology and the American Journal of Psychiatry link low vitamin D levels with reduced cognitive performance, higher rates of depressive symptoms. This doesn't mean vitamin D deficiency causes depression, but it contributes to mental fatigue. People often say, "I don't feel sharp anymore." If that sentence feels familiar, you're not alone. Now let's talk about the symptom most people struggle to describe. Vitamin D-related fatigue feels different. It's persistent, unrefreshing, present, even after adequate sleep. Clinical trials, including a randomized study in Medicine, Baltimore, showed that people with vitamin D deficiency experienced significant fatigue improvement after correction. This explains a frustrating experience many viewers share. Hemoglobin improved, sleep improved, diet improved, yet energy still feels incomplete. This is where confusion and self-blame often begins. Another early sign hides in plain sight. Before fractures occur, many people feel deep bone discomfort, dull aches in hips, thighs, or lower back sensitivity without trauma. This happens because vitamin D deficiency impairs calcium utilization, causing microscopic bone stress. Doctors may label this as mechanical pain, postural strain, age-related discomfort. But clinical studies show these aches often resolve when vitamin D levels are restored. Sometimes the body signals deficiency through immunity. Vitamin D regulates immune balance. Low levels are associated with frequent respiratory infections, slower recovery, persistent inflammation. Large population studies in the British Medical Journal found higher infection rates in people with low vitamin D, especially during winter. People often notice, "I catch every cold. It takes longer to recover." Not alarming, just draining. Now we bring this back to your series foundation. Vitamin D deficiency can reduce erythropoietin sensitivity, increase inflammatory markers, interfere with iron utilization. This means hemoglobin may appear normal. Iron intake may be adequate, energy still feels low. Research in clinical nutrition shows vitamin D indirectly supports red blood cell health by reducing inflammation and improving iron metabolism. This explains a common frustration. "I fixed my iron. Why am I still tired?" Now let's touch a system many people overlook. Vitamin D receptors exist in keratinocytes, fibroblasts, immune cells of the skin. Low vitamin D is linked with poor skin barrier function, increased dryness, delayed wound healing. Dermatology reviews and dermatoendocrinology highlight vitamin D's role in skin repair, immune defense, inflammatory balance. People may notice skin looks dull or fragile. Healing takes longer. Flare-ups happen more often. Subtle but persistent. So why do these signs go unnoticed? Because they develop slowly, overlap with normal stress, don't trigger routine testing. Doctors focus on urgent conditions, abnormal labs. People focus on responsibilities, pushing through, so deficiency continues quietly. Vitamin D deficiency doesn't shout. It whispers through weakness, fatigue, fog, aching, low resilience, and by the time it's obvious, multiple systems are already affected. Now comes the practical question. How much vitamin D is actually enough? What do blood levels really mean? And why normal range isn't always optimal? That's exactly where we go next. If you've stayed with me this far, you already understand something most people don't. A blood report can look fine, and your body can still be struggling. Vitamin D testing is one of the clearest examples of this confusion. People test it, they see a number, they're told it's normal, and yet they still feel weak, tired, achy, low on energy. If that's ever been your experience, this part is especially for you. So let's slow this down and make it simple. Because once you truly understand vitamin D numbers, a lot of frustration suddenly makes sense. Before we talk about good or bad numbers, we need to understand how labs actually classify vitamin D. In the United States, most labs divide vitamin D levels into 3 rough categories. Below 20 ng per milliliter gives deficient, 20 to 30 ng per milliliter gives insufficient, 30 ng per milliliter and above gives reported as normal. On paper, this looks very clear. But in real life, the body doesn't work in neat boxes. Think of it like this. Deficiency means the body is clearly short. Insufficiency means the body has some, but not enough. Normal simply means you're not in immediate danger, and this is the key point many people miss. Normal does not automatically mean optimal energy strong. Muscles good recovery, balanced immunity. That's where people get misled. Now let's talk about the situation that frustrates people the most. Imagine someone with a vitamin D level of 23 ng per milliliter. The lab might say, low but acceptable. The doctor might say, it's fine. Don't worry, but the body might say something very different. Muscles feel weak, energy drops early in the day, joints ache, motivation feels low, immunity feels fragile. Have you ever been told everything is normal, but you didn't feel normal at all? This happens because vitamin D works on a spectrum, not an on-off switch. Being above deficient doesn't mean your systems are working well. This is especially true for adults over 30 people indoors most of the day, those recovering from anemia or chronic fatigue, individuals with inflammation or higher body fat. Now we come to the most debated term in vitamin D discussions. Different medical organizations use different targets. Some focus on preventing bone disease. Others look at muscle strength, immunity, and daily function. Instead of medical arguments, here's a simple way to understand it. Below 20 ng per milliliter gives. The body is clearly undersupplied. 20 to 30 ng per milliliter gives. The body survives, but often does not. Thrive around 40 to 60 ng per milliliter gives. Many people report better energy, strength, and recovery. This does not mean everyone should chase a high number. It means the body often functions better above the bare minimum. Just like sleeping 4 hours keeps you alive, sleeping 7 to 8 hours helps you function. Vitamin D works the same way. Here's where many people get confused. Two people can both have a vitamin D level of 28 ng/ml. One feels fine, the other feels exhausted. Why? Because blood levels don't show how well your body uses vitamin D. That depends on age, inflammation levels, body fat. Vitamin D can get stored and trapped. Liver and kidney activation, magnesium, availability, overall metabolic health. So the number is a starting point, not a verdict. That's why some people improve only after raising levels slightly higher or keeping them steady for longer. Consistency often matters more than the exact number. Now let's address something most people don't realize. Not all labs use the same testing method, calibrate results the same way, interpret ranges equally. That means a result of 30 ng per milliliter in one lab might appear as 27 or 33 in another. This is why chasing exact numbers creates anxiety. What matters more is trends over time, symptoms, improving, testing at the same lab when possible. Vitamin D isn't about perfection, it's about direction. This part matters for trust. Most doctors aren't ignoring vitamin D. They're following systems designed to prevent disease, avoid unnecessary testing, prioritize urgent risks. Vitamin D deficiency usually isn't an emergency, doesn't cause dramatic lab changes, develops slowly over years. So unless there's bone disease, frequent fractures, severe muscle weakness, or very low levels, it often stays in the background. But quality of life lives in the background. Fatigue, weakness, low motivation, slow recovery. These matter, even if they don't alarm a chart. Testing isn't for everyone, but for some, it's very helpful. Testing makes sense if you feel tired despite normal hemoglobin, have muscle or joint aches, work indoors. Most days live in northern states, have darker skin, are over 40, get sick, often have unexplained fatigue. Testing doesn't replace symptoms. It gives them context. Here's something important many people miss. Testing is not the solution. Understanding the result is. One test doesn't tell you how long levels have been low, how your body responds, how fast recovery happens. That's why people often say, I tested it. Now what? The real value of testing is when it guides lifestyle changes, sun exposure habits, nutrition choices, medically guided supplementation when needed. Testing is a tool, not a treatment. Let's close the loop. Hemoglobin tells you how much oxygen is delivered. Vitamin D helps decide how well cells and muscles respond to that oxygen. So when vitamin D stays low, delivery improves, utilization stays inefficient. That's why many people say, I'm not anemic anymore, but I'm still not strong. The problem isn't delivery anymore, it's utilization. Vitamin D numbers are guides, not guarantees. Context, not conclusions. Normal is a starting line, not a finish line. Symptoms matter. Trends matter. How you feel matters. Once you understand this, vitamin D testing becomes empowering instead of confusing. Now comes the most practical question of all. How do you actually restore vitamin D? Safely and realistically? Sunlight? Food? Supplements? Why does advice seem so inconsistent? That's exactly where we go next. Common myths, mistakes, and overuse risks by now. You understand something very important, and this is where many people go wrong. Vitamin D deficiency is common. Vitamin D restoration takes time. And vitamin D is powerful, but it is not magical. This discussion exists for one critical reason: to stop people from hurting themselves while trying to help themselves. Because here's what usually happens. People finally learn that vitamin D matters. They get motivated. They want results fast. And that's when good intentions quietly turn into mistakes. Let's talk about those mistakes. Calmly, clearly, and without fear. Let's start with the most dangerous misunderstanding of all. Many people believe if low vitamin D is bad, then higher must be better. It sounds logical. It feels empowering. But it's wrong. Vitamin D is not like water. It does not flush out easily. It builds up inside the body. This changes everything. What? That means in real life, small improvements are helpful. Excessive intake can cause harm. Balance matters more than extremes. The goal is adequate, not excessive. So why do so many people fall into this trap? Because they read dramatic success stories online. They see high-dose advice on social media. They are tired of feeling weak or exhausted. They want their energy back now. They feel dismissed and decide to take control. And honestly, that frustration is understandable. But here's the truth most platforms don't say out loud. Vitamin D is not something you experiment with blindly. Now let's address another question people constantly ask. Should I take vitamin D daily or weekly? You hear, take it every day. Take it once a week. I took one huge dose once a month. So which one is right? Here's the honest answer. All of these approaches exist, but they are not interchangeable. Different dosing schedules are used for different deficiency levels, different absorption patterns, different medical situations. What works for one person may be completely wrong for another, and this is why copying someone else's routine is risky. Even if they swear it worked for them. At this point, many people think, if I forget daily supplements, I'll just take a big dose. It feels easier. It feels efficient. But the body doesn't always agree. Large doses can overwhelm regulation systems, increase side effect risk, create spikes instead of stability. For many people, steady intake works better than dramatic swings. Again, and this theme matters, consistency beats intensity. This next part is one of the most important concepts in the entire series. Vitamin D is fat-soluble. That means it is stored in body fat. It is not quickly eliminated. Excess can quietly accumulate. This makes it very different from water-soluble vitamins like vitamin C. With vitamin D, too much today, too much next week, too much next month can slowly turn into a problem without warning signs at first. And that's what makes overuse dangerous. Vitamin D. Overuse rarely announces itself loudly. Instead, people may notice nausea, loss of appetite, unusual fatigue, headaches, mental fog, or confusion, frequent urination, muscle weakness instead of strength. Here's the tricky part. These symptoms often look like other problems. So people don't suspect vitamin D at all. Self-megadosing means very high doses. No testing, no follow-up, no understanding of personal risk. This becomes especially dangerous if someone has kidney issues, takes calcium supplements, has certain medical conditions, is over 50 already, has moderate vitamin D levels. What starts as self-care can quietly turn into harm. This isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to protect you. Here's something many people never hear about. Vitamin D increases calcium absorption, which is beneficial, but too much vitamin D can raise calcium levels excessively, stress the kidneys, increase kidney stone risk, disrupt blood chemistry. This is why doctors often monitor vitamin D levels, calcium levels, because the body works as a system, not a single number. This is one of the most common mistakes people make. Someone feels tired, achy, foggy, and thinks, my vitamin D must still be low. So they increase the dose, but sometimes, and this is important, those symptoms are from too much, not too little. Without testing, people guess. And guessing with fat-soluble vitamins is risky. This doesn't mean everyone needs constant doctor visits, but supervision matters when high doses are used. Symptoms change unexpectedly. Deficiency was severe. Multiple supplements are involved. Chronic conditions exist, medical guidance isn't about control. It's about safety. Even one follow-up test can prevent long-term issues. Online content often oversimplifies, promotes extreme success stories, ignores individual differences, focuses on numbers, not symptoms. What worked for someone else may not work for you, may actually harm you. That's why your channel's calm, grounded approach matters. You're not selling fear. You're offering clarity. Let me ask you honestly, have you ever increased a supplement dose on your own? Did you assume natural means safe? Have you followed online advice without testing? If yes, you're not alone. Most people are trying to feel better, not hurt themselves. But knowledge is what keeps good intentions safe. Understanding these myths helps you restore vitamin D safely, avoid long-term damage, support muscles and bones, protect kidney health, age with stability, not uncertainty, and this becomes even more important as we move into skin health, inflammation, immune balance, aging-related conditions. Vitamin D is a foundation, not a shortcut. We've now covered deficiency testing, aging and muscle loss, lifestyle restoration, myths and overuse risks. Now comes the final piece, how everything fits together. What actually matters long-term, how to move forward without fear or confusion. If you've stayed with us through this entire series, pause for a moment. Not because you memorized numbers, not because you chased trends, but because you learned how systems connect. Energy is not one thing, strength is not one vitamin, health is not one lab test, and vitamin D is not a miracle, but it is a missing piece for many people. This final discussion isn't about adding more information. It's about helping everything finally make sense. Let's start with one of the most frustrating experiences adults share. I've done the tests. I've seen the reports. They say I'm normal, but I don't feel normal. If that sounds familiar, you're not imagining it, and you're not alone. Everything you've learned in this series explains why this happens. Because lab ranges reflect averages, not optimization. Symptoms can appear before disease. Deficiencies can live quietly in the gray zone. Aging changes how the body responds. Lifestyle slowly reshapes biology. Vitamin D deficiency rarely screams. It whispers. And when those whispers go unnoticed for long enough, they turn into fatigue, weakness, low mood, slow recovery, and something deeper, a loss of trust in your own body. Let's be very clear and very honest about this. This series was never about blaming vitamin D for everything. It was about understanding how it supports muscle strength, balance and coordination, immune stability, red blood cell efficiency, inflammation control, skin repair, long-term resilience. Vitamin D works quietly in the background, like wiring in a house. You don't see it. But when it's faulty, nothing works the way it should. Here's one of the most important ideas we want you to carry forward. Feeling better is not instant, and that's okay. Your body doesn't rebuild energy in days. It rebuilds it in weeks and months. That doesn't mean you're failing. It means your body is responding in a safe, sustainable way. True healing feels steady, gradual, grounded, not dramatic, not extreme. So what does rebuilding energy the right way actually mean? It means understanding your levels instead of guessing, respecting your age and life stage, prioritizing lifestyle before shortcuts, avoiding extremes, staying consistent, listening to symptoms, not just numbers, and just as important, it means letting go of guilt. You didn't cause this by not trying hard enough. Modern life made this common. Medical guidance matters. Not because something is wrong with you, but because partnership matters. Consider professional advice if fatigue persists despite lifestyle changes, muscle weakness continues, balance issues or falls appear, lab levels don't improve over time, you're considering higher dose supplements, you have existing medical conditions. Seeking guidance is not weakness, it's wisdom. And remember, a good healthcare conversation should feel collaborative, not dismissive. Let's make this practical and realistic. Moving forward can look like this. Become aware, notice your energy, strength, recovery, and mood. Be consistent. Small habits repeated over time matter more than intensity. Steady is better. Retest when appropriate, not obsessively. Responsibly. Stay patient. Healing respects time. You don't need perfection. You need direction. Many people quietly tell themselves, I'm tired because I'm getting older. Aging does change the body, but it does not mean surrender. Strength can improve. Balance can improve. Energy can improve. Confidence can return. When you support the body instead of fighting it, aging becomes something you work with, not something that happens to you. This series opens the door to something much bigger, because the same principles apply to skin health, inflammation, immune balance, metabolic health, hormonal changes, recovery and repair. Vitamin D is just a starting point. Understanding it gives you the tools to approach future health topics without fear or confusion, and that's exactly where this channel, Inside Human Health, is going next. If you've ever felt dismissed, confused, tired of normal answers, unsure who to trust, we see you. Your symptoms matter. Your experience matters. And your body is not broken. It's communicating. Learning how to listen is the first step toward rebuilding energy the right way. We want to hear from you. Have you struggled with fatigue? Have your tests ever said normal while you felt anything but? Did something in this series finally click for you? Share your experience in the comments. Your story may help someone else feel less alone, and we may feature it in future discussions. Health is not about chasing perfection. It's about understanding your body, respecting its signals, and supporting it wisely, one step at a time. And now you're equipped to do exactly that.